Perfect.
Sorry, it's a distracting. I didn't notice it was the FC Cincy one. It's very nice.
So my cable got unplugged, and I had been rolling on Wi-Fi because of how I have my system set up, because I'm pretty sure the cat unplugged my cable.
I believe that.
So it switched over to... So I have a second router that I have my desktop plugged into, and I have some stuff run with network extenders and things, with a hub, and my computer got unplugged from the hub, and since I have a router, it just picked up the slack and picked it up wirelessly and was continuing me. There it is. That's why I went from 500 down, 500 up to 100 down, 100 up. And so now it should all be better. Live. Should be streaming. Let's try this again. Are those buttons working? No, they're not. Thank you, Scott. I'm back. This will be a fun one to edit. Let me redo this social, because that was crazy. Live, please. Oopsie. Copy.
I still see streams starting.
Okay, tweet that, go here, send this out, then I'll post it on Reddit again, not Reddit, Discord again, blah, 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 had a tech, the stream is back. Let's do that to here. Okay, sorry. There we go. It's back. Welcome back, everyone who's joined us, which is just Scott and Ashley. Please do, once again, redo the social, get the people back in, and we're just going to pick up right from where we left off. Sorry, I think my cat unplugged my internet cable, and I'm going to have to redo some kajiggering as that gets fixed. So, but anyway, we're back. We'll see if people rejoin us. If not, we'll still at least get some editing done. So, Ashley, you were talking about your takeaways.
Yeah. I'll skip down to the things I think are more fantasy implications. I was saying that I think Mukhtar is underperforming. I don't know if anybody heard me but Blayne, but
I did. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah, he's only got Blayne and I were having a full conversation while all of this was filtered. He's underperforming for his expectations. Only double digits once this season. I'm not sure I'm ready to fade him, but I'm definitely starting to question him. LAFC and Austin. I expected Austin's road woes to continue and LAFC to score. Both those things happened. Bwanga's second hat trick of the year. The first one was in CCL. He looks phenomenal. You guys know how hard it was for me at first to like him because I loved Chicho so much, but I don't know how LAFC struck lightning in the bottle twice with their strikers. He's just phenomenal. And another LAFC shutout with a rotated back line. That was impressive to me. Interesting to see who gets the start in El Trafico, Valencia, or Hollingshead. In typical fashion, they did this a lot last year. They kind of rotate that back line always, so it's hard to know if it's rotated or if that's just who's hot in practice that week. Ask Donuts if you're confused, because I don't ever know what the thought process is there sometimes. New England Revolution Montreal, my expectation was that Montreal would suck, and they did. And the reality was a really good showing from Bobby Wood and Heel, just being Heel. I think almost everybody in the world captained him, and he definitely rewarded that with a good showing. And Bobby Wood drew a penalty, scored a goal, had another a pretty decent performance for a budget striker. Something to consider going forward. So yeah, Reid, how did you do?
So I got smashed by Skylar's fantasy tax this week. I finished on 120, and then after the adjustments, I dropped down to 117, which I think is the largest point adjustment I have ever received in a single week. And so nothing really changed with my leagues. It was still like this morning, if you saw my GIF on Twitter, I was like, I got 120 points. Let's see how my leagues did. Patrick got 123 points. I guess I'll just walk right back out of here. So yeah, in the Experts League, just again continuing this. Like I did well at the beginning, and then for the past like 3 rounds, it's just been like I got a pretty good score, and like and someone got just a pretty good bit better than I did. But that's just part of the fun. I did a lot of tinkering after I saw that Philadelphia lineup with Cincinnati. I ended up throwing in Miazga and Celentano into my lineup, and so on as a auto route with the bench play potentially, and that worked out with 10 from Miazga, 9 from Celentano. Did not go with any of the attackers, and I think you can see why from that game. It was still difficult, even though Philly had a huge rotation. It's part of my expectation reality. They had that huge rotation, and they're a deep team, and we saw that again. It's still some struggles, but Cincinnati with the bulk of the possession, completely different than what it was against Miami, and we had those late game just not antics, but stress at the end with the PK, the goal, and everything that happened right there. But I wanted to point out that Acosta got the PK, which great for Acosta. I know some people picked him up. But in that game continuing, the pressure in the middle, Acosta was all over the field, mostly on one of the wings, cut into his point significantly. If not for that PK, we would have had another poor showing for Acosta, which puts him more into that Mukhtar category. I think like Ashley was talking about, not performing very highly. Sneak peek at the mega reference. Acosta did come back he left the game shortly after that PK, came back at the end in a sling, expected to be out maybe 1 to 2 weeks. So it will be interesting to see what kinds of changes happen. We'll talk about that some during our player preview section right there. But
you're right. I wanted to look when you said that Acosta. This is Acosta's first goal, and it was his first double-digit showing of the season. So he's had 2 games with goal contributions with assists, but that was his first goal and his first double-digit game, which is a little surprising. Yeah,
it's not great. Philly, on the other hand, when they brought their A team back in, you could see the significant difference, and that is something that we as fantasy players know. That's the quality team. Those are the players that we're looking for right there. The expectation reality for DC Columbus. Road teams always difficult. Columbus was there. DC has struggled, and so I know I rolled with Zellerion, and that paid off. And it was still good to see a strong bonus point production from those players on Columbus's side that didn't get a goal, didn't get assists, still had some pretty good point generation during that game on the road in DC. So that was a very good showing for Columbus and a good little clean sheet for those of you who rolled with that option right there. And then finally, we had some conversation last week about Espinoza. I honestly don't remember if it was on the show or if we had it later on in chats on Reddit. But there was conversation last week about Espinoza going up against the Red Bulls. The Red Bulls have that high pressure. Just their style can mess with teams. And I think we saw that with that San Jose game where Espinoza was the only player to come away with a double-digit score thanks to his goal. I think that's something as a fantasy manager we need to consider is that play style of Red Bulls, how that will factor into the normal performance of those teams. So if you got Espinoza, good for you. You did get those points, but just keep an eye on who is playing Red Bulls because they can definitely cause the team to not be able to play their game, and that will impact the general expected points that we can see from those players that may at times be key to our planning. All right, a quick check over to who has rejoined us back in chat. I don't know how the editing is going to work out, but we did have some weird internet problems for myself. Apparently my cat had unplugged my internet cable and my computer was running on Wi-Fi, which is significantly slower than what happens when it's plugged in. Not seeing much talk on the chat, so in the interest of time, we're going to move on to our housekeeping right after this. Yeah, that social's not working. Yeah, chat. So that's what happened is I've got the whole Google thing at the house, and so I have one router in my garage. That's the main router plugged into the modem, and then I have another one here where my computer is in the basement. And because it's the second gen Googles, the routers are the only ones that have the Ethernet ports on them, and so I have a hub that I have some cat cables run through that extends down here to my computer because the Wi-Fi just doesn't cut it, and that's where I get everything plugged in at. Well, my cat apparently had been playing around and unplugged my computer from the hub. Probably my fault. I must have not plugged it in really well when I was rearranging some stuff, but the cat knocked it out. And so to my computer's credit, it just switched over to Wi-Fi and kept me going, but at about a quarter of the speed in which it should normally be. So yeah, that's what happened there. So thank you, cat. Thank you, cat. Okay, here. So enough of that. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about housekeeping for the upcoming round 8 with fantasy. Of course, round 8 is never going to be complete unless we talk about our league standings first. And so a big shout out to Half Century City in the Pro Rel Champions League, still winning overall with a 6-1-0 record. Moving down to our Veterans League, it's Sombrero FC on points. Down to our Homegrown League, a new leader with Manischewitz United 6-0-1. Not the first time he's been on this list or been announced on this show. And that is by points because there are 2 teams tied at 6-0-1. And then down in our new Discovery League, still 3 teams tied at 6-0-1. But it's Dejan Foreign Resident FC. I probably butchered that, but that's what you expect. Who is winning on points. Go down to our other leagues with Discord. We have 3 players who are tied at 7-0-0, but it is Christian, our very own Christian, who is still winning by points. At the Patreon head-to-head, we have 11 players tied at 5-0-1 with Sloppy Steaks by points. And then finally, in the MLS Fantasy Insider Experts Invitational, you crazy, crazy people, there are 3 of you who are tied at 6-0-1, and it's, again, Sloppy Steaks by points right there. So for this round, everything starts, round 8, everything starts on April 15th. That is Saturday at 7:30. Again, like we have had for the past several weeks, this is almost everybody playing on Saturday with that 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30 start. Be sure to plan out your aroos accordingly. Then we do have one game on Sunday, April 16th. At 4:30, which is LA Galaxy versus LAFC. That is the rescheduled El Tráfico. And it comes at a very interesting time because we also have the second round of some more Champions League games. So we're going to see Philadelphia play its away leg this week. And we're also going to see Vancouver, I guess, technically play its away leg this week at LAFC. So essentially a double home game for LAFC this week, how they deal with being there in Los Angeles. And last week they dropped that just pounding on Vancouver. So it'll be interesting to see what you all think in our next segment about how that rotation may play into effect. But keep an eye on those lineups. That will definitely, especially I think that LAFC game, will play into some of the options that we have going into this round. We have one team on a bye, no teams on double game, and that is Miami on a bye. You definitely have switcheroo options there with 4.0 players. Easy to get there. Seattle versus Portland and San Jose versus Sporting Kansas City are the late games on Saturday, so that's going to give you some good switcheroo options there. If not auto-roo options, if you are eyeing that Seattle game, as several people likely are. And again, it's that Philadelphia game is on 4/12, which is tomorrow, which is Tuesday, and then the Vancouver game is it Wednesday? Actually, we didn't write that one down.
I think Vancouver's tomorrow as well, Tuesday.
Are they both Tuesday? Yeah, they were a day apart before, but they're both playing. So just check the schedule and see with that. But again, for the LAFC, it's basically gonna be 2 home games for them.
No, you've got that back.
Did I switch it? Did they travel last week?
No. Yeah, Vancouver is in LA tomorrow, Tuesday. Philly is playing on Wednesday.
Oh, okay, that's what I got backwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, good. That's a big gap for LA. So thank you for that update, Blayne. I glanced at that before the show started and just got it switched around in my head. We had a lot going on last week, and so Blayne, have you gotten a chance to run through the mega reference that Skylar or that Ranch is updated?
Tyler, aka Ranch, was great for us today.
Mm-hmm.
Start off with some good news. We always love good news on this. Pedro Santos returned for DCU. Defender playing up, honestly, as a winger half the time, so that's always good to note, especially with the matchup they have this week. Abear returned for Seattle as a sub. I'm a huge fan of that one. That just adds more wrinkles to the what's going to happen up top thing. He was playing really well with Morris out wide. Now Morris is playing incredibly well up top, and then Rui Diaz scores a goal last week. So who knows? They've got 3 healthy strikers again. Minnesota's Young Sung Bin sees his first minutes, and he was on set pieces, and that's why that one's here. Big signing for them this offseason, and he's now taking set pieces, which is always good to note for a team like that. And then Polito started for Sporting for the first time in like 2 years. So always nice to get guys back. That's huge. Some really interesting and bad news. Franco Ibarra picked up the red card for Atlanta. Hector Herrera picked up his red card for Houston, and then the Galaxy lost both Douglas Costa and Martin Caceres to red cards. And then the really rough news today, which we've heard about a little bit, it was Daniel Van Zier for New York Red Bulls who was accused of using some not so kind language. I guess he admitted to it or owned up to it. So watch out for a suspension to be handed down before the weekend. I don't know that many people were taking him because he hasn't been playing a lot, but that could be a long one there. So just keep an eye on that if you are interested in Red Bull. As far as injuries go, Kyoto was training separately for Montreal, so that's just another major piece down for them. That dumpster fire is getting even worse. Judson for San Jose is listed as well. Maxo for Colorado had a really nasty collision.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So
with one of Kansas City center backs. Went into concussion protocol almost immediately. So we'll have to see what's going on. It may not be bad, but he was wobbly when he got up, so he is out, or he's probably out for a little bit with that. Kubas for Vancouver came off with a shoulder injury. Blom for St. Louis had a knee injury, and then Lucho Acosta had his arm in a sling after the match.
I'm going to throw out, because I'm assuming you guys didn't talk about this last week. I know you didn't talk about this last week because I listened, that Joao Paulo was out of the 18 for Seattle as well.
That's right.
With I think, groin or hamstring tightness, but didn't even make the bench. So that's something to pay attention to going into the derby this week.
And one more that I have insider information on coming out of Salt Lake City. Krylock has been demoted to a bench role and a sub role, and he was an unfeatured sub last week. So that was listed here from Tyler as a potential injury. I've got word that that's actually a demotion or just a better fit for him to come off as a super sub and play a little bit different role. Honestly, RSL needs to shake things up a little bit and find something that works. So I don't know how long he'll have that, but that's what's the word coming out of that camp right now.
I do have one update Black and Red pointed out, and I'd seen this mentioned during Discord as well, that Santos is not playing out of position anymore since his return.
Good to know.
So yeah, so one quick update right there. I'd gotten a heads up about Maxo as well from Matt Pollard with Colorado, keeping an eye on there. That did shake up some of Colorado's lineup. So it's the kind of news that we hate to hear, but there is. We'll talk more about that in our next segment for how that could impact everything. If you want to learn more, keep up to date with all of these injuries and changes and call-ups and lineups, be sure to head over to the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. That's where everything happens right there. Lineups get posted as soon as we can see them, and the update is managed by the community, which is just such a fantastic project that everyone participates in. Thank you so much. And the easiest way to find that, it's fun, it's free, is at MLSFantasyBoss.com/Discord. And now for what I know you've all been waiting for, we're going to talk about who we are targeting for our player picks for round 8. Okay. Manual social is for the birds. Manual social tweet. There we go. All right. We're making this one work tonight. That's what's going on. We're
one bit at a time.
All right. So I got. I don't have the consensus, but we've got picks in here. So here we go.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome back for our final segment of tonight's show, where we're talking about our player targets going into round 8. And as always, Ashley, let's start out with keepers and defenders.
Yeah, I kind of hate keepers and defenders this season. But this past week was one of the first times I hit across the board. There's not a lot I love this week. I'm considering doing a Schultz or Marks, Columbus and Charlotte, respectively, to Marcinkowski or McCarthy. I think that this week gives a lot more opportunity for keepers. I think a lot of people are going to talk about Seattle defense, and I hear you, but I, as a homer, am staying away from that completely because it's a Cascadia derby in Portland. Blayne's totally right. They're not scoring. Portland's not scoring very well, but historically, Seattle has rarely, if not never, gone down there and gotten a shutout. So it's not something that I love to be wrong, obviously, but from a fantasy perspective, I'm not gonna touch that. I like Rodriguez for San Jose. Looking at San Jose defense this week for sure. I like the bonus point production, and I know it's against New England, but it's a home game for Farsi from Columbus. Looking at LAFC defenders, either Palencia or Hollingshead, if Hollingshead starts. And then probably an FC Dallas defender or a New York Red Bull defender. I'm kind of going back and forth between a couple different people. I'm also considering NYCFC. I know that I just listed more teams than we have spots, but like I said, nothing is really screaming out to me too strong. Except for San Jose, Columbus, and LAFC, and then I'm kind of wavering on the rest of those spots. I did this last week, which I think actually kind of got me in some trouble because of bench points hitting, but I'm at the point now, price-wise, where I have enough money to start the week without a scrub, and then scrub a defender, a later defender if everything else works out. But I think that amount of options has kind of messed with my head. So I might just throw a scrub out there this week and then, go with everything else. So yeah, that's my defense look this week.
Blayne.
Yeah, I'm a little bit different. I'm kind of all over the place because this is such a tough week. I do like Seattle just because I don't trust Portland, and I'm willing to give Fry a chance on the road. It's
so
one of those.
Expensive though.
Yeah, it is expensive. It's one of those weird ones that I don't know who else to pick. Like, I've got Charlotte in the first game, whoever starts for them, because I know there's some rotation there, and just don't know who's healthy all the time. And Colorado hasn't been great, but I'm not sold on any of these. I honestly may go Fry on the bench on the front end to whoever LAFC starts if I need it, and just do double up on that, and then I can always bail to Marcinkowski if Evander somehow starts and it looks like Portland's going to run out of healthier lineup. Like, it gives me that flexibility on the back end to take some of those later games with one Sunday game and a match that I like with LAFC. It's not bad, but I'm looking at road, which tells you how bad this weekend is.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Maybe it's just, if Kyoto's out, maybe it's just you slot DC's keeper in on the bench and you pray for nothing to happen there as your first goalkeeper and just run with it. Betting against Montreal has paid off multiple times this year, and that may be the way to go. That DC is going to be cheaper than any of the other options I'm looking at as well. So that may be, and I don't even know who DC's keeper is right now. Like, that's how bad I've ignored them. For that same reason, I think you could be safe if you're needing budget. Look at one of the DC starting defenders. Again, I know Pines has the best average, but I don't know if he's starting every game. I don't pay attention to DC. But Montreal's that bad. I think you can take DC on the road defensively, take some cheaper options, throw those guys on your bench, hope they hit, and then free up money for everything else on those little bit later games. Although there's not too much option to do that. Sorry, the app is still broken, so I am having to
No.
switch back and forth from multiple devices. Other than that, I like Alex Roldan there. He gets forward. Portland's defense has been pretty terrible. I think there's chance for bonus points. I also like Gressel. I know that's not the matchup everybody would want, but Austin has been pretty leaky all season. Their home form isn't much better than their road form. I would take Gressel again this week. I think he's worth it, and he's been putting up so many offensive numbers. And then looking at possibly benching Lindsey in that first game against Colorado. He's picked up some bonus points, played pretty okay. It's an easy one to slot in for that first game. And then somebody from Dallas, probably Martinez, but just somebody from Dallas to save a little bit on budget. As I was putting my lineup together, I actually went way over budget, so I couldn't afford like Rodriguez for San Jose.
Yeah.
I've got a good budget, but I've got a lot of money tied up in my midfield. Like, I liked Rodriguez. He was one of those early names I threw in my team, but when it came down to budget crunch, healthy Polito, healthy Russell, I don't know that they've got the clean sheet there. It could be a good chance for bonus points. I don't know if I want to invest in that one right there with some other options out there.
What's your budget, Blayne?
I'm at like 124.
What's yours, Ashley?
129.8.
Okay.
I just want to say, because I just looked it up, that the Sounders have only ever gone to Portland and had a shutout 4 times since the start of this rivalry, which was 2011, and they've only done it once in the last 4 seasons.
So they're due.
You could look at it like that, but I'd be cautious, is all I'm gonna say.
But I will say, I think this is the weakest Portland team they've gone to face in a long time.
I think so too. As you know, in rivalry games, the weaker team tends to stand up a little bit when called upon by their people they hate the most. So all I'm saying is, those with Fry and Alex talking, that you make me nervous. I'm nervous for you.
Yeah, well, again, I saw a tweet as well. I think I said this was the season where the Portlanders had the fewest shots on goal ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point in the season, so it's interesting right there. So I guess I'm leading up the bottom right here. I've not even cracked 123 yet, so I'm like 122.6, something like that with my budget. So I'm definitely still using those 4.0 scrubs, trying to field some teams. But you guys have covered a lot of what I'm looking at as well. I'm currently just running a solo keeper, and I'm looking at probably San Jose as a target. Was also tempted by the Red Bulls with there, knowing that Herrera's got that red card. He is a huge part of that offense. They have other offensive pieces, so it's not like they're just anemic without him. But that could be that's a keeperoo that I've eyed on. If you're looking at San Jose, any of the 7:30 games is going to be an ideal keeperoo for you to make sure you see that. And of course, if you want to roll with someone from the LA Galaxy or LAFC side with El Trafico, then you of course use anybody who you want to for your keeperoo. But I'm kind of looking at San Jose right now myself, and the same thing, undecided on defense. This is where I try to shave some money. When I need to shave money, this is where I look over at the defense to see if there are any players that I can get maybe that second choice player for a few less and free up some cash there. It becomes a bit more either bonus point based or sort of clean sheet hunting at times. But yeah, someone from Seattle I'm targeting as well. Trying to not buy into the superstition. Again, looking more at the Portland form. LAFC is another team that I'm interested in. Like Hollingshead and some of what he's done, but yeah, the questions about will he be there. And again, San Jose is I'd like to double up my keeper with my defender, and so those are other players who I am looking at. I think you guys have touched on other options though that can be there. I'm concerned about some of these games. That Columbus New England game, I know we've looked at some of those teams recently for some of those defensive players. They've both been scoring. I don't know how that's going to end up. I mean, maybe that could be a 1-1 kind of draw there where we don't get a lot going on for each team with how it goes. The Charlotte-Colorado game also is really intriguing to me, just to see what happens there with Colorado not being a great offensive team. Well, both teams struggling, not knowing what's happening with Colorado's defense. Does that open something up or what's going to happen there. So there could be some value options right there as well. And then again, going down into that St. Louis Cincinnati game, I think that's a big coin toss with what's going to happen with Acosta being gone. How is St. Louis going to respond to having these losses right there? We know there is value in the St. Louis back line, and Cincinnati has at times struggled with some goals. So you could have a little switcheroo right there that could work well with an LA Galaxy team member, with an LAFC team member, because we're not, let's just be honest, none of us are going to be picking LA Galaxy defenders this week. Let's just be honest right there. So with an LAFC team right there. So I think there are some other options that people could look at if they're looking for those differentials, but I'm sure that Tyler will send us some very interesting options in his article this week, so don't want to get too deep into it. But thanks for pointing those out. I think you guys are on the right track. Let's move on now to midfielders. Blayne.
Yeah, this is a terrible week for midfielders. All the ones we want are on the road, or pretty close to it, and that's really hurts for me. I'm at the point where just pick the best guy against the worst team, against the worst opponent, and go with it. So Almada hits my list really fast for that. I don't trust Toronto's defense. Almada's been a bonus point machine, plays really well. I think that's a pretty safe bet just to go pick up some easy points and be done with it. I'm going to continue to bet against Montreal, so I'm taking Click. He hasn't been stellar, but if there's a game he's going to hit double digits, it's going to be this one. He's a little bit cheaper as an option as well, so this one's an easy one to slot in. Early, you can throw him on the bench if you don't like him too much. I've got to pick somebody from Dallas. I'm leaning towards Velasco. I feel like he's got the better style to go into this RSL defense that has not been playing well. And I think he doesn't go down the side with Brody, which is also helpful there. So that's just one of those. I really like that game. It's probably one of the better home games you can get. Everything else I'm torn on. I know Ashley's got a name she's going to throw out there. I'm looking at Zella, even though I do trust the New England defense quite a bit. Like, I don't know that this is that big one, but he's on PKs. Their style, they could go get one there. His free kicks are always nasty. I could just see him doing damage to New England like he always does. Free kicks and penalties. And then it's probably the easiest one to put in there is Espinoza versus Kansas City, with the way Kansas City's playing recently, giving up a lot of goals. So it's kind of take the best player against the worst opponent. And I think the other game, and Ashley's going to talk about it because it's her team, but I mean, I'm looking at maybe even dumping Zella versus a good New England defense and trying to pick up something in that Seattle game.
Ashley?
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate a couple of names that Blayne said. I like Espinoza for a couple different reasons. I do like Zella. I also like Heel, even though he's on the road. I think Almada is, do I say fixture proof? I don't know. Reid and I were talking before the show started. He did have an assist this past week, but he got 11 points at NYCFC on that pitch. On the road, he's just really producing. I know he had that off week, his first game back from international duty, but he just is looking so good. He's definitely on my team this week. And then the midi I'm considering, although he's only scorned me so far this season, is Santi Rodriguez, playing at home against Nashville, who has been a pretty solid defense so far this year, but playing up on that narrow pitch can tend to benefit him. Santi only got a 3 this past week against Atlanta, which I think is a little surprising, but it's something lineup dependent wise I definitely might consider. And then I'm really on the fence about Nico Ladero, guys. Guy can't crack an 8. Without Joao Paulo there as well, I think that he is. It's not the same game. Based on the matchup, I might talk myself more into Christian Roldan. strictly for the matchup potential, but you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too pessimistic as a fan, but from the fantasy perspective, I'm struggling a little bit with Seattle midfielders and defenders this week.
I think that's totally fair. Got some similar names as well: Espinosa, Zella, Amada, Nico. Looking at, and then I also had Ojeda as one, just because. Again, that was a point or a budget move. I had just under $8 million left, and was looking at some of the options, and he fit that. And Orlando is away to Minnesota, which last week we talked about how Minnesota was on a bit of an uptick with their production, but he seemed a best option as possibly a bench switch potentially there. First draft, though, still looking at some of the other teams. Other names, Dallas I looked at as well. And the biggest pick you're going for there, Blayne, I'm assuming, is that they're against RSL, because all of their midfielders have just not been producing well at all. And so I know that Valeska's been the one that we've gone to, but still there's just not been a lot of consistent point generation or shots there. And so it makes me struggle when looking at the Dallas players. And that is definitely something that's a bet against Real Salt Lake. It is definitely something where the player I would hope is going to be on your bench, but $8.3 million is still kind of pricey for something about that, depending on where you're at with your points. I mean, you'd be looking at the same thing if you were going to go with like Klitsch with DC 8.8. That's still a player who has not been producing where we had expected him to be. Just a bunch of threes recently for him as well. So there's some question marks, I think, that we have there. Looking at that El Tráfico there, I mentioned that no one's going with LA Galaxy for their defense. I considered this game also for some midfield options just to see what was there. I know that Brugman's been a very popular pick going around lately, and so you could consider him with LA. And then over on LAFC, again, I kind of feel like Dallas with LAFC's midfield is that there's not been a lot of great standout midfielders here, and I know that Tillman tends to be the one that people go for, but his not had consistent minutes in the last couple of games. He's not even played full 90s. His points have dropped off. He has a couple of goals. His shots have dropped off a little bit, and so I just feel like LAFC does not have a lot of fantastic midfield options. And again, maybe you're betting against LA Galaxy, but this could be around when maybe you go with four midfielders and hit 3 forwards. Is this a 3 forward round, or is this a 5 defender round that someone wants to go with and go light there just with some of the weirdness? Because it is a strange week. And the answer will probably be no. Other players will step up that we didn't expect except for Spencer, and it'll be one of the highest weeks of the season. But there are a lot of just weird mismatches here, and that's sort of the process that I've been going through. I've been trying to evaluate some of these players to see there.
Well, Loxley did not like your suggestion to go with 4 midfielders. He says take 5.
I mean, that's the way I tend to play, and so like it's just strange to even come out. But I mean that was something I did think about going through here. Is would I rather roll with 3 forwards and save up some of that money to shift into some of these defensive players or some of these offensive players? I mean, looking at maybe Aggressal with depending on how that game works. But that's just part of how you're gonna have to play and maneuver and choose your tactics with this. I mean, Roldan, a good call out as well if you want to go for some alternatives right there. So definitely.
Reid, I want to give one note on LAFC because it's something I've seen. And I think it'll be really helpful at this point. Tillman came off at 60 minutes this week, and with the rotation, they have no depth in midfield.
No,
I mean it's Acosta, Ilie, Sifu, and Tillman, and that's it. That's all they can run out there. So they're already dealing with tired legs, with a congested schedule. Anybody is potentially rotatable at this point for them. So it's kind of a crapshoot on who is going to sit. If you really want to gamble, watch the minutes, see who's gotten the most rest. If Tillman goes 90, then that means they probably pulled him last weekend to prepare for this. I like Tillman. Sifu's not too far behind him on my radar, but they've only got 4 guys, so there is going to be rotation, and you are risking it. There's not a chance like, oh, all 3 guys are going 90. That's not happening. So keep that in mind that they've only got 4 healthy mids that are MLS ready right now.
Yep. Well, let's move on to, since I mentioned forwards, let's talk about forwards and who we're looking at for this round. So, Ashley.
Okay, so here's where I'm going to eat everything I've just said about Seattle. And one of the first people I put on my team, but did put on my bench, is Raul Ruidiaz. So, Raul Ruidiaz scores against Portland more than just about any other striker in Seattle history. He's cheap right now. I think he's 7.1. Let me check before I say it wrong. 7.1 because he's been hurt. He just got on the score sheet this past weekend. I think he'll start. If he doesn't start, I'm not going to obviously play him. I'm not here for just the bench goals. Hebert will not start. Ruidiaz might start. That will shift Jordan Morris out to the wing again, which makes Jordan Morris less of a goal-scoring threat. So all of the goals that anybody got from Jordan Morris in the past 4 weeks, you're not going to get if he moves out wide and Ruidiaz starts. So just for consideration, I think that that's important to note when lineups come out. I think Bouanga has to be in everybody's team. I don't understand how he wouldn't be. And then Jesus Ferreira was another one of the players I put on my team first, again, for kind of obvious reasons, mostly the matchup. But I'm also considering Swiderski got back on the scoreboard this past weekend. Charlotte's just not a team I trust. And so, you know, like, I don't know. I think that he's an option, but I just worry about them. They're not consistent enough for me to really figure out, you know, if he's a goal scoring threat. But Rui, Bouanga, Jesus for sure, and then I'm just kind of trying to figure out what to do in case Rui doesn't start.
Here, Blayne.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines. Ferreira and Bouanga were the first 2 guys that I put up here. I really think you should probably take them both. I've talked up Dallas, but I just don't think RSL's that great. I think this is a chance for Dallas just to run up 3-4 goals on somebody, and Ferreira's going to be involved if that happens. So I think you want a piece of this one. It's that third spot for me that's really all over the place. Part of me is leaning towards Benteke. That's an expensive $8 million pick to throw on the bench. But again, it's Montreal, and Montreal's giving up goals like crazy. If Kyoto's out, Piet, I guess we forgot it in the injury news, Piet suffered a pretty nasty injury, and he's out at least 6 to 8 weeks, if not longer. They don't have anybody. It's where are they going to hold the ball? You're asking a bunch of kids to play against MLS ready teams. It's feeding frenzy at this point. And if DC is going to do it, and I think they've got the quality to do it, Benteke is a likely candidate to get multiple goals in that game. It's hard for me to ignore him. Swiderski getting on the score sheet threw him right on my radar too. It's that early game. It's an easy bench pick. See what happens. Ruidiaz, if he starts, is such a good value against a bad opponent. You could go there. I will say, if you're going to look at Ruidiaz and he doesn't start, okay, Morris is better, and Morris is another one you could easily switch to. If Ruidiaz starts and you don't have the money,
but don't do that. But don't do that, because if Ruidiaz starts, then Jordan Morris is out wide. So please don't pick up a second LAFC striker.
Yeah, or I mean, set the money for Morris in case he's up top. You can always downgrade to Ruidiaz, or if you don't like that because you think Ruidiaz is going to come out early and Hebert's going to go in, Abobasi's right there at that same time slot. So you've got another late game option that you can use in that same time slot. And I know chat's going crazy about Abobasi right now. He's kind of cooled off a little bit lately, but they always like him. We always hear his name. And it is Kansas City who has given up a few goals recently. I think their defense is better than what we thought it was going to be, and I think they are going to slow down San Jose a little bit. Espinoza gets his value from bonus points. Abobasi is more goal dependent. I could see him getting one. I'm not saying he won't, but I don't think he's that big home run like you would find in a Ruidiaz starting or a Jordan Morris starting against Portland or Benteke getting Montreal. I think he's just a step down, but we've got to mention him being that late, and if Seattle really changes things up on us, then you have to have a pivot, and you're already going to have Bouanga. Do you try to pick up a second LAFC, or you've got a Bobasi right there? Like,
I think Bella and Apoko are way better backup plans to Rui Diaz or Morris than a Bobasi. I'm happy to see him get a brace this weekend, and prove me wrong, but I think a Bobasi, you could say he's due, but he's definitely cold. And there's a game the next day with 3 great striker options, or even Buke if you want to go. He's got to be cheap, I'm sure. I think that hitting that LAFC game is a better fallback.
Yeah.
Let me just say, saying he's due is fallacy talk. That's not how things work.
I agree.
But this is fantasy land where people go, oh, Kansas City's terrible right now. They're last place in the league. You bet against those teams. I think the defense is a little better than that. But I know Chat was talking about him quite a bit. And it's like, you got to know he's an option if you don't like what Seattle does at that late time slot. It gives you several starting options to pivot to.
And I think that is fine reasoning, not he is due. Again, I think you all touched on the ones that many people are looking at. The one I'm going to throw out there, again, kind of random, mentioned at the top of the show, injury in Colorado, what's going to happen there. Capetti, maybe there with Charlotte for how that could happen depending on what happens with Colorado. $7 million switcheroo option there as a forward, potentially. Just want to put his name out there on the list for those who might want to. Maybe I'm taking something from Tyler. I don't know if Tyler's a Charlotte kind of guy, but that's another name I think we could throw out there. Otherwise, I think you hit the big ones. The most interesting one's going to be that Morris Rui Diaz because of the timing of the game, unless you're willing to make significant changes to what you're going to be doing against an El Tráfico. Not going to be a like-for-like swap there with some of your money. So if you're budgeting for Morris and starting Rui, you're making sacrifices somewhere and leaving money on the field. So that's going to – but I love what you said, Ashley. If you're not going to do – if Rui Diaz doesn't start, then look at doubling up on those LAFC forwards because, I mean, Vela's not much more expensive than Rui Diaz and also cheaper than Jordan Morris. So you may be able to leave $1 million. He's actually, I guess, 1.7 million floating. That could be easier than what you had to do to get Morris.
Can I do a mini tangent with you guys before we do captains about who we're benching and how? So traditionally, you all always start players who are in the later games in case you need to scrub them, right? That's kind of the strategy that universally those of us who have played for a long time do. I am struggling this year. Maybe there's someone out there like me where all of these games are so close together that I've been trying to stick to that because that's what I know. And it's bit me in the ass more times than it ever has before. And it was this last week I was talking to someone else that I play with, and they were saying, I'm starting to just bench the people that I have the least trust in and running 2 scrubs. And I'm not even paying attention to when they play. I run 1 run scrub, and I do have a later game player that I wouldn't be terribly upset to scrub out. But because of how the games have been timed out with this, my understanding is it's the Apple Plus structure. How the games are all so close together and often all on the same day. That it's just getting more difficult to do that effectively. Do you guys have any opinion on that? Have you felt any of that like I have this year where? No,
I think I think you're right. I think keeperoos are still pretty easy to manage. If you get, that's what I was saying, 7:30 games and 10:30 games. That's your sweet spot for where you're getting things maneuvered. Otherwise, you end up in a situation last week where it's like, oh my gosh, there's extra time. We knew there was extra time. This game's going to be a few minutes over. I need to make this decision now. This format definitely plays better with auto-roos. It plays better, just like you're saying. I have 3 guys on my bench. I have 2 scrubs in the field. I'm going to automatically get the 2 highest scoring players there. This week, slight caveat, because we have that Sunday game, we can do a little bit some, but no, you're exactly right. When everything's on the same day, I too have felt that, and I have been leaning heavily into the auto-roo life, which frankly I did that last year as well when my kid was born, so that was that was just easy. So, but this schedule I think has definitely played better for the auto-roo strategy.
Yeah, it's difficult for me because I have always, once we get to this amount of money, I tend to play a full team and then I scrub out whoever needs to be scrubbed out. And so it started this past week because it's the first time I was able to do it. And especially I saw someone else say this chat, when you go to games, it's even harder, right? Or if you're raising a baby or doing other things to, it's harder to pay as much attention to. And yeah, I'm just considering that kind of set it and forget it mindset, which isn't what I'm used to. But when all these games are on the same day within the same 3 hours, I think that's something. If it's not your style, and again, maybe other people aren't struggling with it like I am, but my style is not set it and forget it, and I'm just starting to think that I need to adjust that because this schedule is making it hard to be not a tinkerer like I am, but a methodical tinker. It's getting a little tougher.
Yeah, I've always felt you get more bang for your buck with the auto ruse.
I know you do.
You're risking less money. Like your example earlier. Oh, you put Rui Diaz in there, or you put Morris in there, and then you downgrade to Rui Diaz because he's starting up top. Well, now you're stranded $2 million or $3 million. What do you do with that extra money? You're so late in the week. You're not using it.
Yeah, last week I had 6.8 million just in the bank because of who I had to scrub so many people to bring in.
I'm sure you would have loved to have had a different midfielder with that money.
Sure. Yeah. I just scrub out a mini. Do you know how hard that was, you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I've been a big proponent of auto ruse, and it's my double game week strategy. I'm not shy about it. You don't tinker. You set it, forget it on double game weeks, and just let the best bench take it for you. What I have found though, and I am not this player. I am never a double defender bench play. I usually run 3 defenders, 2 defender scrubs, and my bench is set up for auto ruse with my attacking players. I have found with this schedule, I'm running a whole lot more defenders on the bench, seeing those early scores, and then falling back to either cheaper options or better options, or able to upgrade one of my midfielders on the back end.
Sure.
And that's been a lot more forgiving than how do I scrub this midfielder, or do I scrub a forward for the guy on my bench? What am I doing now? I've just found it's been easier to run a couple of bench defenders, play with it that way, and if they hit, then I can scrub one of my defenders and I have a little bit of money freed up. Not a lot more. I'm not scrubbing out 3 million excess. It's a million or 2 excess that I could then upgrade another player, or I don't feel like I'm doing what Ashley did and dropping 7 million on my bank and waiting for the next.
To be fair, I did still have a price rise, but that was miraculous.
Well, we could probably talk about that a lot longer, but
thank you guys. I just wanted to kind of have that conversation. I've been having it other places as well. I thought it'd be good to kind of touch on. Here.
Absolutely valid. Let's wrap everything else up with our captain picks. Ashley.
Guys, I don't have one. I mean, I really don't. I'm leaning towards Espinoza. Last time I captained him, he didn't do me so well. My first thought was Bwanga. I think Reid and I are the ones who say this, and I apologize, Blayne, if you're often in this with us, but I hate captaining the last game. I hate captaining. I don't know why. I hate captaining someone in the very last game. What if he doesn't start? What if they run a bunch of youths because they had Champions League? I don't know. It's a whole day later. It's a Trafico, but I think Bwanga is probably who I will end up putting it on, much to my dismay, and I'll just have anxiety about it as everybody hits on Saturday. But Espinoza and Bwanga is who I've been bouncing it back and forth.
Blayne.
Yeah, you take the best player against the worst opponent, and that really screams Bwanga this week.
Yep.
I'm the one that will captain a forward more often than everybody else that comes on the show.
I don't mind captaining a forward. I just hate doing the last. But you're right. We don't like it.
and last game makes me nervous because it is Champions League. What if they do rotate? But this is El Trafico. And Bwanga's really felt like an Iron Man type of player. Yes, he subs off at the 80th minute, but he's scoring goals when he subs out. So we've never felt bad. Or he did sub in the other day and then still scored.
Yep. After traveling for 18 hours
back
he took
from
the bone. Yeah.
Yeah, this man is an Iron Man. So if you're worried about it, we've got an Iron Man potential here that I trust. If you don't like that game, Espinoza is always a good shout. I would be willing to consider Almada going to Toronto, though, as my second captain.
He only got 8 at home against Toronto this year, I will say. That's what makes me nervous. I say only like that's picky. But for a captain, 8. So.
Yeah, be it.
Reid?
So this week, I currently have my captain's armband on Bowanga.
It's hard for you to say, isn't it?
I was trying to build it up. I was trying
to
to build it up as much as I could. I think Espinosa is obviously in that mix. I'm kind of concerned about the Sporting Kansas City defense. They put up a pretty good showing, and I don't know. I could see that factoring. There a lot of, which is it fair to call it, Blayne? Like a lot of center back strength there with SKC, and I think that's not a good setup for Espinosa.
Sure.
Unbelievably, yes. That's what it's been. That was the big weakness we had, and didn't change it up a whole lot. I mean, Castellanos was a cast-off from Nashville, and he's been playing out of his mind back there at center back.
Yeah, so I feel like that could eat into Espinosa, and I'm considering Bowanga. I know he had that massive. I'm not banking on another hat trick, but he had those 2 against Vancouver earlier in the week. He had 3 this week. I want to see the lineup. I feel like this might be the time when, hey, we're already 3 up on Vancouver. They're coming to us here at home. We've got another game on Sunday here in LA, home, quote unquote. That maybe this is some time where some guys get some rest because they can. I don't know. I have no clue, but it feels like this one could be like maybe some guys get some rest in this game or play at the beginning and then come off at halftime or at the 60, something like that. So we see I could see what happens right there, but I do like Bowanga, and it is check the full moon because I am often not one who does throw the armband on the captain, especially when it's the last game of the round. So chat seems to be pretty similar as well with their little bit of Vela mentions here in the game. Had a little delayed conversation about Bowanga for a forward option. Again, there's several forward options, I think, so I don't know. Betting against Montreal, we love doing it. Is it with the other options that we have? Do we hate them enough for going with that? Maybe. I don't know. But I think we've had a good conversation about forwards to fall back on. So I think, we covered most of the captain picks. Look forward to seeing for the participation in the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord community player poll this week. We only had 2 players selected as captains last week, so we may have only 2 player options selected again for this week. But if you have other options besides Bowanga or Espinosa, vote and let us know. I'll throw it up there. Top 3 is what I put when we have 3 in the results, and so just share your opinions and put it up there. Let the community know who you are thinking, and it doesn't have to be your team. It could just be if the sky was the limit, these are the players you think are going to do the best, or just whatever criteria you want to do for how you're selecting the players that you're submitting. And you don't have to submit every number that we ask for as well. You can just put a couple for each if you'd like to do that. But head over there and check out the player poll that Christian helps us with, and participation is always appreciated. Well, after some weird technical hiccups that we had at the beginning of the show, I think that we have finally come to the end. Thank you so much for everyone who hung around with us. Apologize for any strange editing at the beginning of the show that may happen once I get around to doing it. But let's just wrap everything else up with our plugs. Blayne.
Yeah, I'm going to plug a group that doesn't get plugged very often, and that's our chat on Monday nights. They stuck with us through technical difficulties, but they're always throwing out crazy ideas. And one that got missed right at the end, and it wasn't a good time to throw it in, is actually Gutman may be back for Atlanta. He was on the bench, looks healthy. If he's back, that could push Wiley up to that starting left winger again, which definitely throws a wrench into everything because he was on fire as a winger, scoring multiple goals, assists, everything. This is 100% on chat for letting us know. But these are the type of things you miss when you're not in chat with us. Sure. And we don't get to announce everything they say on the show. We try to follow along, but we can't cover everything. So that's just one of the little nuggets that's in chat on Monday nights. And if you haven't come out for a show, definitely come out and hang out with this crew. They're a lot of fun people that give give us a lot of crap and give us a lot of good insights on things that we just can't keep up with.
Ashley.
Got nothing. Rivalries? Rivalry weekend? It's not even rivalry weekend. I don't know what's going on. The 2 best rivalries in MLS. Everything else is irrelevant. I don't know.
We can see what happens. Same for me as always. MLSFantasyBoss.com for our articles, for Tyler's and the Discord poll. MLS Fantasy Boss Discord for that fantastic community and continuous chat that goes on there, and the MLS Fantasy Insider Patreon community. As we plugged at the beginning of the show, it's just such a great to have you all along for the ride with us as we continue down the fantasy season. It's flying by so fast, but we still have a lot to go, and look forward to sharing that with you all throughout this entire year. So as we always say, good luck.